Hi, my name is Meg McCraken, and I live here in Truckee, California, in Squaw Valley, and I teach here locally, and as well I teach out nationally, out about the world, teacher trainings and workshops, that kind of thing. And I'm here today to help you guys break down Bakasana, which is crow pose. And the thing that I want to discuss about crow pose is on this continuum of effort and ease that we're always surfing and navigating as yogis. I feel like arm balances and Bakasana in particular has tip the scales over to the effort and the forceful quality. And I want to see if today we can kind of bring it back a little bit to be a little bit more easeful, a little bit more graceful. It's not this forceful will in the arms that has this voice of It's more of a coil back through the pit of the belly. It's more of a touching deep inside the center so that you can really tap into the grace that lies within and float in with a little bit more effortless quality. So all that being said, and also I want to say that the voice of it really should be more like coming home. Like when you float up into your arm balances, it should be a little bit more like. So that being said, how we do that is, first of all, we need to start by navigating and opening our hips. So anything that you can do to open up through the inner thighs and get your hips nice and open is going to help you a lot to tap into your center. And a few things I can recommend. And I would just start laying out on your back, and this is the best way to stabilize your spine and really get pure in what you're doing in the hips. Just lay back and just get a feel for where your hips are. Maybe stay here and take a couple of breaths and just drop a knee to the side and let your hip drop open and let those inner thighs stretch. You do that in each side. And then maybe from there, if you're feeling pretty comfortable, you could just take the soles of your feet together and let the knees drop open, and the heels can come a little closer if you need a bigger stretch, a little further away if you need less of a stretch. And then from here, I would move folks maybe into a happy baby pose, and kind of a dynamic one. You can have people stretch their hips back and forth. You can have people grab behind their thighs if their hips aren't quite open, get their shins up, grab their big toes. You can even stretch out the inner thighs, something like that, roll around just a little bit, get some real clear opening through the inner thighs. And then once your hips feel nice and open, I'd really like to go into a space where you can feel what I'm talking about when I say coil back through the pit of the belly, touch your center, and find that grace that's going to carry you beyond just the arms. This is going to be more of like a belly-centered, grace-centered pose. So when you come into your variation of happy baby pose, you're going to reach your hands between your legs, and you're going to clamp your legs onto your arms like your arms are thigh masters. You're going to coil back through the pit of the belly so that the head and shoulders can lift up off the floor. And if this is straining on your neck, you can place one hand behind your head, that's fine, but keep clamping the legs in, and that clamping action is going to tune you deep into your belly. Now from here, you're going to see if you can rock your sacrum up away from the floor too, so that you can curl into a tiny seat of yourself. And you can take a couple of breaths here, and as you do that, you're going to feel a deep strength that lies within the muscles and within the pit of the belly. So after you've got that dialed, you can roll yourself on up. And a really good way to kind of gauge where you are in your hips is to come into Malasana, just a nice little squat. You want your outer hips strong so the inner knees are wide. Some folks are a little bit more open in the hips and they can take their feet together and let the knees drop open. Either is fine, but for people that are a little bit more strong in the hips, I recommend wide feet. And then from here, the inner knees go wide so that you can coil back through the pit of the belly and get your arms down low. And again, just like we did on the back, we're going to clamp the legs onto the arms and then resist the arms with the legs. And this is just a really good preparatory pose to help you feel what it's like to coil back through the pit of the belly and get your chest in through the thighs. Now, as you move into Bakasana, it's really, really radically important that you place your hands clearly. So you're going to want to spread your fingers wide. And then once you spread your fingers wide, you want to press your hands slightly forward until the base of your wrist gets a little light. And then make sure that you have the weight of your index finger and the weight of your thumb pressing down. Typically people roll their hand up and then put a lot of pressure in this little pisiform bone on the outer wrist. So clear Hastabandha hands, really important. You push your fingerprints into the mat so that the arch of your palm lifts up. Once you get really clear in your hands upon the mat, you're going to coil back through the pit of the belly, squeeze the legs onto the arms just like we did on the spine, and come up onto the balls of your feet. And then the tendency here is for people to really lose their center and lift their butt high because they're thinking, I need to get my feet up off the floor. But instead, what I want you to think about is really drawing in through the pit of your belly and then leaning forward into your experience, coiling back until the feet just gently float up off the floor. And then from here, you're gonna squeeze the thighs, or squeeze the arms with the thighs, and start to lift the hips up. and you press it down. So instead of it being this great big force of will with the butt up and the hands down, and now I gotta find my center here, and the voice of the pose is more of a grunt, it's more hands down, coil back, take a deep breath, and then as you inhale, you just gently float and rise up. Now, there's a lot of different variations to this pose. One is starting with the legs on the outer arms, and then another one is with the knees up in through the armpits. And if you start there with the knees up in through the armpits, you just want to make sure that your butt's not sticking straight up. You still need to have that coil back through the pit of the belly. The pelvis rocks a little bit back here so that you have that deep strength so that you can start to float up into that pose. You can also get the arms really straight and your hips really high once you floated up off of the floor. Hug in, coil back. Feels like coming home. You could breathe, you could stay. Then you squeeze your legs onto your arms and get your hips really high. Try not to fall off this table. And then from there, that's a really good starting point. If you feel like you're pretty proficient with that and you want to start to advance the pose maybe to Ekapada Bakasana, which is one-legged crow pose, you could come into your crow pose, take a deep breath, find your center, coil back through the pit of the belly, clear Hastabandha hands, and just drop a knee. And just feel what it's like to be on a one arm, one leg thing. Hook it back in, switch sides. So that's a way that you could advance it. Let's say you have some pretty tricky wrists. The variation that we did on the back is an excellent place to build your strength and build clarity. But you could also do this pose down on your forearms. So also, if you have a hard time getting back into the pit of your belly, this is really going to accentuate that action. So you can lay your forearms upon the floor, hands in a prayer so you're not clenching and turning your fingers white. And you're just going to press your wrists down. Again, clamp the legs onto the arms, coil back through the pit of the belly, and then reach forward, lean into your experience with such clarity and such grace that you start to float up off the mat. And then from here, if you feel like your hips are just not opening that much, so you can't get your belly in between your thighs, one more variation that you can do to work on like that grace of the arm balance without having to have the opening of your hips just yet, is you can come into a cat-cow pose position. And we're gonna take the cat position of that. Again, clear Hastabandha hands, and you're gonna coil back through the pit of the belly, lift the knees, and then you float your knees right in between your inner upper arms and you coil in near. And then you just lift your heart a little forward and float your feet up off the floor. And again, it's a little bit more like coming home. So hopefully that helped you with your Bakasana today. Thank you. Namaste.